It was a perfect spring morning when Sarah Thompson decided to take her daughter Emma to Riverside Park. The sun was warm, birds were chirping, and the playground echoed with children's laughter. Sarah, a successful black doctor who had adopted Emma 2 years ago, loved these precious morning moments with her daughter. Emma's blonde curls bounced as she ran ahead, her little pink shoes lighting up with each step. "Mommy, can we go to the swings?" she called out, her blue eyes sparkling with excitement. Sarah couldn't help but smile, remembering the day she first met Emma at the adoption center. Their connection had been instant, as if they were always meant to be mother and daughter. As Sarah pushed Emma on the swings, she noticed an older white woman in an expensive tracksuit watching them from a nearby bench. The woman, Linda Davidson, kept looking up from her phone, her face growing more suspicious with each glance. Sarah was used to the stares. Being a black mother with a white child often drew attention, but something about Linda's expression made her uncomfortable. Emma was telling Sarah about her kindergarten art project when Linda started making phone calls. She wasn't trying to be quiet about it either. "Yes, I'm at Riverside Park," Linda said loudly into her phone, "and there's something very suspicious happening here." The black woman with a white child. The poor thing looks terrified. Sarah's heart began to race, but she kept her voice steady for Emma's sake. "Higher, Mommy, higher," Emma squealed, completely unaware of the drama unfolding around her. Other parents at the playground had started to notice Linda's behavior, some shaking their heads in disapproval. Things took a turn when Linda stood up and marched toward them, her designer handbag swinging aggressively at her side. "Excuse me," she announced in a sharp voice that made several nearby children stop playing. "What exactly are you doing with that child?" Sarah felt her throat tighten, but years of handling emergency room situations had taught her to stay calm under pressure. She held Emma's swing steady as her daughter looked up, confused by the stranger's harsh tone. Several parents moved closer, some already pulling out their phones to record what was happening. "I'm spending time with my daughter," Sarah replied calmly, placing a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. But Linda wasn't having it. Her face reddened as she pulled out her phone again. "Well, we'll just let the police decide about that. They're already on their way." Emma grabbed Sarah's hand tightly, her lower lip trembling. "Mommy, why is that lady angry?" she whispered. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand reassuringly, while inside, her mind raced through all the adoption papers safely stored in her phone's photo gallery. She knew what was coming next, and she was ready for it. Linda's dramatic outburst had drawn quite a crowd at Riverside Park. Parents who had been peacefully watching their children play were now forming a loose circle around the swings, their faces showing a mix of concern and disbelief. Sarah noticed at least 3 phones recording the scene, their cameras catching every moment of Linda's misguided crusade. "I demand to see some proof right now." Linda's voice cracked with what she probably thought was righteous anger. Her perfectly manicured finger pointed accusingly at Sarah, who stood protectively in front of Emma. "Children get kidnapped every day, and I won't stand by and let it happen." Sarah took a deep breath, remembering the diversity training sessions she'd led at the hospital. "Ma'am," she began, her voice steady and professional, "I understand you're concerned, but Emma is my legally adopted daughter. I have all the documentation on my phone." "Oh, please." Linda cut her off with a dismissive wave. "Anyone can fake documents these days. I've watched enough crime shows to know how these things work." She clutched her designer handbag closer, as if protecting it from imaginary threats. Emma, usually outgoing and cheerful, had gone quiet. She wrapped her small arms around Sarah's legs, her face pressed against her mother's knee. "Mommy," she whispered, loud enough for nearby parents to hear, "why does the mean lady think you're not my real mommy?" The question hit the gathering crowd like a punch to the gut. Several parents exchanged knowing looks, and one mother stepped forward, her own biracial children standing beside her. "Linda Davidson," she said sharply, "you're making a complete fool of yourself." But Linda wasn't backing down. She paced back and forth, her expensive running shoes kicking up wood chips from the playground. "The police will be here any minute," she announced, checking her Apple Watch. Then we'll get to the bottom of this. Sarah pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened her photo gallery. Emma, sweetie, why don't you tell this lady about your adoption day? Remember the special cake we had? She knew involving Emma might help diffuse the situation, but she hated that her daughter had to defend their family's legitimacy. Emma's face lit up at the memory. It was pink and purple, and Judge Martha gave me a teddy bear. Her innocent enthusiasm made Linda pause for a moment, confusion flickering across her face. But just as quickly, she shook her head, muttering something about coached responses. The police arrived with their lights flashing but no sirens, pulling up to the park entrance in 2 patrol cars. Detective Maria Rodriguez stepped out first, followed by Officer James Chen. The crowd at the playground parted as they approached, phones still recording every moment. Detective Rodriguez, a veteran of 15 years on the force, took in the scene with experienced eyes. She noticed Emma's tight grip on Sarah's hand, the protective stance of several parents around them, and Linda's triumphant expression as she rushed toward the officers. "Thank goodness you're here," Linda exclaimed, her voice carrying across the playground. "I caught this woman with a suspicious." Detective Rodriguez held up her hand, silencing Linda mid-sentence. Her years of experience had taught her to read situations quickly, and this one was already setting off familiar alarms. "I'm Detective Rodriguez, and this is Officer Chen," she announced calmly. "Could everyone please take a step back and give us some space?" The crowd reluctantly moved back, though their phones stayed focused on the unfolding drama. Emma, still holding Sarah's hand, looked up at the officers with wide eyes. "Are you going to take my mommy away?" she asked in a small voice that made even Officer Chen's professional expression soften. Detective Rodriguez knelt down to Emma's eye level, her voice gentle. "No, sweetheart. We're just here to talk." Sarah pulled up her phone gallery, showing a folder labeled Emma's adoption. "I have all our documentation here, Detective," she said steadily, "including the final adoption decree, our family photos from the courthouse, and Emma's updated birth certificate." As Detective Rodriguez reviewed the documents, Linda grew increasingly agitated. "Those could be fake. We need to do a proper investigation," she insisted, her designer tracksuit rustling as she shifted from foot to foot. Officer Chen noticed something interesting. Several parents in the crowd were nodding to each other, whispering. Finally, a woman stepped forward, her scrubs visible under her jacket. "Detective, I work with Dr. Thompson at Children's Memorial. She's one of our top pediatric surgeons. She actually operated on my son last year." The revelation sent ripples through the crowd. More parents started speaking up, some sharing stories of how Dr. Thompson had helped their children. Linda's face began to lose its righteous color, replaced by an uncomfortable flush. The atmosphere in the park shifted dramatically as more people recognized Sarah Thompson. A man in a baseball cap stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. "Dr. Thompson saved my daughter's life last summer. She had a complicated heart condition that other doctors said was too risky to operate on. But Dr. Thompson took the case and performed a miracle." Detective Rodriguez watched as Linda Davidson's face transformed from righteous indignation to horrified realization. The detective pulled up Sarah's credentials on her department tablet. Chief of Pediatric Surgery at Children's Memorial, board member of the International Adoption Support Network, and recipient of last year's Excellence in Medicine Award. Emma, now feeling more secure with the supportive crowd around them, tugged at Detective Rodriguez's sleeve. "Want to see my special picture?" she asked, reaching for Sarah's phone. Sarah smiled and pulled up a photo of their adoption day. Emma in a frilly dress, Sarah in a smart suit, both beaming at the camera as they held up their official adoption papers in front of Judge Martha's bench. A young mother with twins spoke up next. "Dr. Thompson runs free medical clinics for adoptive families every month. She's been helping my girls since they came from Vietnam." Others joined in, sharing stories of Sarah's dedication to children's health care and her support for diverse families in the community. Linda had backed away slightly, her earlier confidence crumbling with each new revelation. Her designer handbag, which she'd been clutching like a shield, now hung limply at her side. I didn't know," she stammered, her voice barely audible over the murmur of the crowd. Officer Chen was taking notes. But they weren't about Sarah. They were about Linda's false report. "Ma'am," he addressed Linda, "making false police reports is a serious offense. And if Dr. Thompson wishes to press charges for harassment—" Sarah raised her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "That won't be necessary," she said firmly. "But I hope this serves as a lesson about making assumptions." She turned to Emma, who was now happily showing her adoption day photos to a group of fascinated children. Love doesn't always look the way people expect it to. By evening, videos of the park incident had spread across social media like wildfire. Local Facebook groups, neighborhood apps, and Twitter were buzzing with footage showing Linda Davidson's confrontation with Dr. Sarah Thompson. The hashtag #ParkKaren started trending in their area, accompanied by thousands of comments supporting Sarah and condemning Linda's actions. Local news stations picked up the story, running headlines like "Respected Surgeon Racially Profiled," while playing with adopted daughter. Parents from the park gave interviews, describing how Linda had disrupted what should have been a peaceful morning. The most viral clip showed Emma's innocent question about why the mean lady thought Sarah wasn't her real mommy. Linda Davidson's life began unraveling quickly. Her friends at the country club stopped inviting her to their weekly brunches. The charity organization where she volunteered as a treasurer asked her to step down. Her son, watching the video from his college dorm, called home mortified, asking how his mother could do something so embarrassing and hurtful. The adoption community rallied around Sarah and Emma. Families with mixed-race adoptions began sharing their own stories of discrimination and prejudice. Support groups organized a peaceful gathering at Riverside Park, where hundreds of adoptive families came together to show solidarity. They carried signs reading, "Love makes a family," and "Stop judging our families." Linda tried defending herself on social media, claiming she was just being vigilant about child safety, but her posts were met with fierce criticism. People dug up her past social media activity, revealing a pattern of subtle racism and prejudice she had never acknowledged before. Sarah's hospital colleagues organized a surprise for her when she returned to work. They decorated the surgical wing with pictures of their own diverse families, creating a wall of love and support. Emma's kindergarten class made cards for her, with one little boy writing, "Your mommy helps sick kids get better. She's the best mommy ever." The incident sparked important conversations in the community about racial bias and modern family structures. Local schools began incorporating more inclusive family representation in their curricula, and the police department announced additional training programs focused on avoiding racial profiling in community calls. Linda Davidson sat alone in her living room, scrolling through hundreds of messages on her phone. Each one felt like a punch to her gut. People sharing their adoption stories, describing how her actions had hurt their families, and expressing disappointment in her behavior. The curtains were drawn, and she hadn't left her house in days, too ashamed to face her neighbors. One morning, she received an unexpected email from the director of the local multicultural adoption agency. Instead of criticism, it contained an invitation to attend their monthly educational seminar. Linda's finger hovered over the delete button, but something made her stop. Maybe this was her chance to understand where she went wrong. The seminar room was packed when Linda walked in, her heart pounding. She chose a seat in the back, trying to be invisible. The speaker, a woman named Janet Chen, shared her journey of adopting children from 3 different continents. As Linda listened, tears began rolling down her cheeks. She realized how narrow her view of family had been. After the seminar, Linda approached Janet with trembling hands. "I'm the woman from the park incident," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. To her surprise, Janet didn't turn away. Instead, she invited Linda to join their volunteer program, saying, "The best way to fight prejudice is through education and exposure." Linda threw herself into learning. She attended workshops on racial bias, joined support groups for adoptive families, and started volunteering at the agency's events. Each day brought new insights and challenged her old beliefs. She met families of all configurations: single parents, same-race adoptions, transracial adoptions, and international adoptions. The transformation wasn't easy. Some days, Linda caught herself making assumptions and had to consciously correct her thinking. She started keeping a journal of her journey, documenting her revelations and struggles. "I never realized how much love I was missing by seeing families through such a limited lens," she wrote one evening. Her involvement with the adoption agency gradually began to change others' perceptions of her. While some remained skeptical, many appreciated her efforts to learn and grow from her mistake. She became known as the volunteer who always carried extra tissues for emotional moments during adoption finalization ceremonies. 6 months after the park incident, the community center was decorated with colorful banners announcing Celebrating Family Diversity Day. Sarah Thompson stood at the podium, Emma proudly by her side, addressing a room full of families from all backgrounds. The event was her initiative, turning a painful experience into an opportunity for community healing. Linda Davidson sat in the middle row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When Sarah invited her to speak, she walked to the stage with nervous steps. The microphone trembled in her hand as she faced the crowd. "6 months ago, I was a different person," she began, her voice growing stronger. "I let my prejudices blind me to what family really means." Emma, wearing her favorite purple dress, surprised everyone by running up to Linda and giving her a big hug. The audience gasped, then broke into applause. Even Sarah looked moved by her daughter's spontaneous act of forgiveness. Linda knelt down to Emma's level, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry for what I did that day," she said. Sarah announced the launch of Hearts Without Borders, a support network for diverse families. The organization would offer legal advice, counseling, and community events. Linda had helped develop many of its programs, drawing from her own journey of understanding. "Sometimes our worst mistakes can lead to our greatest growth," Sarah said, inviting Linda to join the board. The event turned into a joyful celebration. Families shared potluck dishes from different cultures, children played together without seeing color, and parents exchanged stories and phone numbers. The local newspaper captured a powerful image: Sarah, Emma, and Linda cutting the ceremonial ribbon together, symbolizing their community's transformation. Linda's final speech touched everyone's hearts. "I thought I was protecting children that day in the park," she admitted. "Instead, I was teaching prejudice. Today, I'm learning what real protection looks like. It looks like acceptance, understanding, and love in all its beautiful forms." As the event ended, Emma asked if Linda would come to her school's upcoming Family Day. Sarah smiled and nodded, watching her daughter teach the most powerful lesson of all: that forgiveness and growth can transform even the deepest prejudices into bridges of understanding.